Oh.
And so when I hear Ryan Poles up there today, and then I hear Kevin Warren and George McCaskey speak, and I remember that I was in the building last year when Kevin Warren in the same room said that Matt Eberflus and Dick Vermeil remind me of the same coach. And then I interviewed with Waddle 9 months ago at the Combine, Ryan Poles, when I asked Ryan Poles, who is your Andy Reid? And he said, Matt Eberflus is my Andy Reid. How can I trust them a year later to believe that they know what they're doing as they embark on this? I've given them the benefit of the doubt at every turn going back to botching the Dave McGinnis hiring. And I've taken you through every step of the way. They never get who they want. They always run the wrong processes. And like, they need to show me now. And when, like, Ryan Poles goes on the podium today, I think the question's in here. Is the question in here, Meller, with Wiederer?
Yes. The Wiederer has the exchange.
So you'll hear Wiederer ask the question to Ryan Poles about Caleb. We know what Caleb went through. Remember, at the beginning of the year, again, let's not forget, let's not just wipe out the history here in the recent past of what Ryan Poles did and said. Ryan Poles said it's time to break the cycle. You know, he doesn't want to hear from anybody else on how they've ruined quarterbacks in Chicago. We're going to break the cycle. So now after, 69 sacks or whatever?
Not nice.
You know, after all the hell that Caleb went through, Dan Wiederer asked this question.
Your plan for Caleb was very specific and very elaborate. Yep. His entire rookie season was subjected to disruption and stress. What?
Can you explain the disruption and stress part?
Offensive coordinator got fired. His head coach got fired. Through a lot of turmoil throughout the course of his rookie season. Yep. What went wrong with your plan?
Yeah. Obviously, there's some things when there's a staff in place. When we went through the interview cycle with Shane, I think there's some compatibility things. I think there's some challenges with pairing, and I answered this before, a rookie quarterback that has a lot of growth. He had 37 starts, in college. You'd like to, have in that 35 to 40 range, and there's a lot of growth there, and there's some compatibility to make sure that it's being taught the right way. And I think there were some hiccups there. And again, that's part of the ownership piece that I got to take.
I have to say as well, I think with the benefit of time, and there's a lot there, I think they handled Caleb in the exact opposite way that other teams did, like in Washington and in Denver and other places in New England with young rookie quarterbacks, despite how much experience they all had. For the love of everything good and pure in this world, I think Jaden Daniels is 24 years old, isn't he? I mean, he's played 5 or 6 years. But even so, what they did is they had a small package of plays and built as the season went on, as he got acclimated. Shane Waldron came in and they just threw everything at him and then realized, oh, wait, maybe that's not the way to go, and then had to start peeling things away. They botched it from the very beginning.
Well, first of all, for him to get snotty with him and to say, like, to act like he's so high and mighty. Well, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, what are you talking about? Like, isn't this the day to hold hat in hand and to wear it at least? At the very least, to wear it and to say, look, we made some mistakes in the past. It's up to me to correct it, and I intend on correcting a lot of the mistakes. I've learned from them. But like, how dare you go up there and act almighty and say, well, what do you mean? Like, he was sacked 69 times. You went on a coordinator search of 10, and you hired the wrong one. You went to bat for Matt Eberflus and kept him when other guys were out there in the best free agent coaching availability, and you kept Eberflus, and he became the first coach ever to be fired in Bears history, and then you took Caleb in his rookie year on a 10-game losing streak. So what are you asking? What turmoil Dan Wiederer is asking you about? Like the lack of self-awareness Ryan Poles has shown us the entire year, from not accepting a trade for Velus Jones at the beginning of the year, to not addressing the offensive line, to not changing the head coach, on and on and on. I'm sorry if I can't stand in front of you today believing that Ryan Poles is all of a sudden going to start doing a 180 and getting it right with the new head coach. He didn't get it right with Shane Waldron. Why do I think he's going to get it right when he's interviewing 14 head coaches?
68 sacks. Almost
68.
68 sacks. It's, I mean, again, I think it all leads back to the same concept for me going forward. How attractive is the job? You may decide that you want this coach. That coach may turn and look at this situation and recognize all that you just described and say, I don't want this situation. So you may not get the pick of the litter.
Like what? Like Bill Zimmerman, who does a podcast, tweeted out, the Raiders just fired their head coach. Antonio Pierce. What if Brady convinces Vrabel to take that job?
And think about that battle now. You got Brady versus the Crafts up there vying for the love of a Mike Vrabel.
Right, or maybe the Patriots want Ben Johnson more than they want Vrabel. I don't know.
Could be.
And as of now, Ben Johnson has accepted 2 interviews as of now. We don't know if the Jaguars have asked or if they're going to be accepted.
They requested.
They did request.
The Jags tweeted out.
We don't know, though, if he's accepted it.
That is correct. We have not been.
We do know he's accepted 2 interviews. And remember, he has said he'll only accept interviews of jobs that he is willing to take. He's accepted the Bears and the Patriots. So what if Vrabel ends up in Vegas? And what if Ben Johnson takes the Patriots? Then what? Like going into your pick of the litter conversation. Is it Mike McCarthy come on down?
If he decides he doesn't want to go back to Dallas, that would probably be where I would think they would land. I think they're leaning to an offensive coach for a lot of reasons, some that I've mentioned yesterday. I think that I would hope that they're targeting Ben Johnson. Is Ben Johnson open to being their head coach? If not, I think I don't know what team or what candidates actually feel. There's as much intrigue for me about what Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel and Brian Flores and Joe Brady and Mike McCarthy, how they feel about this team versus how this team feels about them. Like, because as you just described, what if Mike Vrabel says, I don't want to be in Chicago. I'd go to the Raiders and work with Tom Brady or go to New England and work with the Kraft family.
What if the opposite happens, just to change this on you? Vrabel is expected to come in the next 24 to 36 hours, yes?
I think so.
An interview. What if they sit down with Vrabel and he blows them away? He's got the offensive coordinator. He tells them a plan on how he's going to change the culture, exactly what they wanted to hear, and he wants to, he gives them examples on how he wants to work with Ryan Poles and how they could collaborate together on a personnel plan. As I think it was Breer this morning said, for those of you who think that Vrabel may not mesh right with Poles' scouting system comes from Scott Pioli. Scott Pioli, who was originally in New England, and that's where Vrabel gets his scouting system from. So the Pioli system could work between Vrabel and Poles. They've got a list of 14 they want to meet with. You can't meet in person with Ben Johnson for maybe several weeks. You're only going to get a Zoom this week. But Vrabel may get, Vrabel can be hired at any time. He's not employed anywhere. So he could be hired quickly in Vegas, could be hired quickly in New England. What if he blows you away tomorrow? What do you do then?
I still prefer an offensive guy, but you could do worse than Mike Vrabel.
Would you drop everything and would you be willing to say, let's start talking contract? Or do you want to play this out and do you want risk losing him and go down further with Ben Johnson, knowing there's no guarantee you could land him, that he could say no to you and yes to maybe Jacksonville down the road or New England?
Look, I've stated I'm going to go to whatever ends to try to get Ben Johnson here.
So you're all in on Ben Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, I respect that. I think there's some interesting pieces. And
by the way, like I said, I mean, you could do a hell of a lot worse than Mike Vrabel. If you told me Mike Vrabel was their decision, I wouldn't panic. I just look at, Mike Vrabel comes in and everyone keeps talking about he's going to clean up the situation and bring your culture. Great. So now what I'm looking at is I have to value what's more important to me. Babysitting, that's probably a little strong. Not babysitting a group of professional football players, but actually holding them accountable and leading them. That's probably the more mature way to say it. Is that more important, or getting more out of your offense? Which hopefully either guy could do both. But if I've got to put one over the other, like I would assume that we're going to be more professional next year. And if I'm leaning on a coach to be the only reason why my culture is being cleaned up, and you bring back all the same guys, that tells me that you've got guys in there that need to be weeded out. It can't just be a coach.
Well, that's why, like, when polls, and we'll play you some of this stuff, goes through how great the core is. Well, the core can't be exactly great if all of this melted down.
It can't all be the coach.
Right. There's got to be some guy in there that you perceived as a leader.
Who isn't.
Maybe
guys. Not guy, but maybe guys in there.
He's saying the praises of Jalen Johnson today.
Well, he's a fantastic player. Yeah. Like, I mean, you ask the question about certain guys, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I know Johnny has said that he'd entertain trading Jalen Johnson. I respectfully are on the other side. I think he's too talented to move off from him. If I heard the guys talking about it today, I think it was Shea and was it, or maybe it was Cap and Hoodie today. I mean, if somebody was willing to give you a Jalen Ramsey deal where the teams gave up 2 first-round picks, then I would be interested in making that deal. But I don't think anybody's giving you 2 first-round picks for Jalen Johnson. And with that said, the juice is worth the squeeze because of his talent. I may say differently about Tyreek Stevenson, who I think had a lot of potential coming into this year, but didn't live up to that potential.
The thing about Stevenson is he's not going to get you much, and I'd rather try and rehab. And the thing I'll say about Stevenson, I tweeted about it, is he still was playing hard.
He played hard against the Packers?
And he was playing hard. He still will try and hit guys. And he needs to mature, but I don't believe, like, this is the ultimate. You'd be selling low on Stevenson. You'd be getting him for a 6th or a 7th round pick, and I'm not interested in that.
My point is that if you bring in the coach who's going to clean up the culture and set the tone, that's great. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. But, A, why are we having to do that? And why is that the top priority? Because you've put a roster together of guys who don't hold themselves accountable? Really? And all of that's just going to change because of the coach at the front of the room? Some of it will, but some of it won't because certain guys are going to do certain things. If you compare that to the importance of getting more than bottom 5 statistics out of an offense that you've invested the vast majority of your assets in, if I've got to choose between one or the other and prioritize one over the other, I got to worry about the quarterback and the offense getting better versus cleaning up a bunch of guys that want to talk and not do what's right and don't show up for things and are late for meetings and don't do what's expected of them.
No, I'm with you on Ben Johnson. I also believe that Vrabel's more than just a culture guy. I think I do too. He's a winning coach.
I totally agree with you there. I'm not going to talk anybody off of Mike Vrabel. I'm not. I would never do that.
Like, I'm not in the Cap camp that you have to veer away from an offensive guy because all their offensive guys haven't worked. I think that's stupid.
Well, I think, and people want to immediately compare this to Matt Nagy.
I mean, it's two different.
It's apples and oranges.
Right. Again, it's that whole thing where you drafted one guy from Ohio State and you want to say all Ohio State quarterbacks stink. Hoodie used the analogy, you paid John Danks, so now you never want to pay starting pitchers again. Just because Trustman and Nagy didn't work out doesn't mean that Ben Johnson won't work out. It's no guarantee that he will.
Right.
But you can't stop drafting quarterbacks simply because Fields and Trubisky didn't work out or Rex didn't work out. Yeah. Now Caleb is on the way to working out. You've got to continue to do hopefully do smart things. There's something that George said that today, again, that they're not willing to change anything in that organization. They want to do their way. And what I've always said, it starts at the top. And George admitted today he's got to own his record, and he hasn't done a good enough job. And he says he wants to win more. But yet, on the other hand, he says we are only willing to do it our way. We only want the coach to report to the GM to report to the president report to the owner. We're not budging from that. This is our model, and we're sticking to it. And there have been past stories that other GM candidates have come in and said, we've got to get rid of Cutler. We're going to take a cap hit early on, but we've got to get him out of the building. They're like, no, we're not open to doing that. And when you're not open to listening to why your franchise has lost, you're truly not opening to winning then. If you, this is more than just hiring a coach. They've got to be willing to look in the mirror and figure out, why have we been an eternal losing franchise? And when you don't want to be shaken off of the basic things you do in your building, maybe you'll never win, no matter if it's Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel or Matt Nagy or whoever you bring in.
I feel 100% with you how you run your franchise. And also, it's why I've also talked about looking at this existing roster closely and just not thinking that because you're going to bring in a different coach, not named Matt Eberflus, that all of a sudden now everybody's going to morph into blue chip players.
Right.
Don't think that a better coach who will help is going to turn everything around. You have to make some difficult decisions about your personnel, and I think that those same difficult decisions have to be considered with how you run your franchise also.